Hi everybody. Today we're going to be debating the case of what generation and what is the best Pokemon game in the entire series. I will be defending Pokemon X and Y as the biggest leap forward in the series, both technologically and artistically. And I'll try providing some examples of the newly introduced mechanics, specific Pokemon, and story examples that X and Y brought forth as my evidence. Nicholas.
Howdy, I'm Nicholas, and I will be asserting that Pokemon X and Y are not the best games in the series, and are in fact the worst. I don't have a particular game that I'm going to assert as the best, although I will often be comparing it to Pokemon Black and White, which came out a generation prior, and did everything right that X and Y did wrong.
And I will say as a disclaimer that Black and White happens to be the only Pokemon game that I have not played.
Which explains why he thinks X and Y are good.
But having said that, I still think X and Y is the most superior out of the rest of them, even not having that experience of playing Black and White. But so for our first topic, we're going to be talking about the mechanics and specifically, specifically Mega Evolution as one of the biggest new mechanics that the Pokemon series brought up since basically the start of the series, or the most meaningful mechanic of changing how battles actually happen and how their introduction changed the meta game of professional play.
Objection. How did they actually change how battles actually happen?
Because you have to construct around who you choose as your Mega Evolution, because you can't really go without having one now because they're just too good.
Firstly, yes you can. Secondly, team construction has been the core component of Pokemon strategy ever since Gen 1. You always had to construct your team based around what was meta. Now they just made the meta pool smaller, so teams are less diverse. Look at the usage stats for OU nowadays. Every team ever has a Landorus Therian form on it. That's not healthy. Continue.
Okay. And from the Mega Evolution standpoint, less mechanically, I wanted to discuss how just cool the concept is, from how mostly, not a lot of Pokemon got chosen for Mega Evolution, but the ones that did were some of the coolest, I think, and including my favorite Gengar, who went from his normal purple boy self to an uncontrolled shadow.
We'll overlay that on the camera. You don't have to show him. You can just show me in fact.
Okay.
Yeah, I really liked how they took away his legs. that was just great.
He's a shadow explosion.
Okay, well, firstly, I don't need to point out that your idea of Mega Evolutions being cool is an entirely subjective concept, further clarified by you saying your personal favorites, which you thought were really cool, were, again, entirely subjective.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact is that 43% of the Pokemon that got Mega Evolutions were Cantonian, and in fact, the only two Pokemon that got 2 Mega Evolutions were both Cantonian. Despite being only 20% of the population, Cantonian Pokemon were 43% of Megas when X and Y came out. And this just compounded X and Y's obsession with saying, hey, remember Kanto? Kanto was great. You all like Kanto, right? Kanto sold well.
Kanto was great.
Oh boy. Okay, that's an entirely different debate. Anyway, I'm going to complain more about fan service later, but the fact is, Megas were atrociously distributed and given largely to Pokemon that you couldn't even catch until the game was almost over.
Actually, why don't we talk about fan service now, since it's relevant?
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So Nicholas is mostly against fan service and how relating back to Kanto is pandering, I believe is the word that you chose. So
Yep.
Why don't you speak more about that?
Okay, let me just jiggle apart the notes. Pandering, fan service. Right, yeah, so the entire game is just screaming at us 24/7, Kanto. Bet you like Kanto. Kanto sold well, Kanto. So here's an example. In Gen 1, everyone remembers that there was a Snorlax, right? That you had to play a Poké Flute to wake up. Well, this happens again in Gen 6. At this point, you have, 718 other Pokemon to use. There is a Pokemon in this generation that is a literal giant iceberg. Maybe you could have blocked a road with a giant iceberg, but no, you had to include Snorlax because that's what we did in Gen 1, and everyone has so many good feelings about it. And here's another thing. Pikachu. Pikachu got voice acting. It's the only Pokemon in the entire game to have voice acting. Every other Pokemon has computer-generated screams of the damned going, breathe! But Pikachu is like, Pika! And that is immersion breaking. Raichu, Pichu, its evolutions, they have those digital cries as well, but Pikachu is the only one that doesn't. Another thing, Ash Greninja. Greninja got special form. Did you remember? I hope you didn't because it was terrible. But Ash's Greninja is specifically Ash's Greninja. It looks like Ash when he appeared in Pokemon X and Y. It's a special form unique to his Greninja. Why do we have access to it? Fan service, pandering. There's no logic behind it. It's breaking my immersion. And here's another thing, too many Giftmons. There are 5 Giftmons in the game. Giftmon is a term meaning basically it's a Pokemon that's given to you by the plot. So you've got your original starter, the Kanto starter, because of course, Kanto, I love Kanto, right? And then there's Lapras, that is also a Kanto Pokemon. Then there's Lucario that's forced into your party. And then there's the legendary of the main game. And that's not even counting the Snorlax before, which comes in at a very powerful point in the game. So you'll probably catch it, and it's basically a Giftmon, except you're not forced to catch it at least. When, the entirety of your party is defined by the plot, it's hard to get the feeling that you are living your own Pokemon adventure. You're living the Pokemon adventure that a bunch of Japanese guys are writing out for you. I don't want that, I want my own.
Okay, so I'm going to tackle those points one at a time because that was a lot of stream of consciousness. So your first point was the Snorlax, correct? Where the Snorlax appeared, it would not make sense that Avalugg would be there, as it was foresty region, and Avalugg is an iceberg, as you said.
Well, maybe
they could have put it in the Iceland area, but that would be much farther into the game, where you'd be into the point where you'd want less literal roadblocks rather than breaking your gameplay.
Okay, well, you are clearly splitting hairs here. That was one Pokemon. There's still 717 others they could have used. Gen 4 had a line of silence.
But any Pokemon fan that sees the Snorlax specifically sitting in the middle of the road knows what to do. If they're, I forget the panda Pokemon name that you...
Pancham.
Pancham. If there's a Pancham sitting in the road, you might be like, okay, I need to get it to move somehow, but how would I get it to move? Everyone knows that you need the Poké Flute to move Snorlax, and that is a puzzle mechanic, loosely puzzle mechanic, that any Pokemon fan knows, and they will be able to figure out where to go and find that. As for your second point, I sort of lost the order of...
I think the second point was, Pikachu's voice acting.
Pikachu's voice acting.
And only Pikachu's voice acting.
I do agree with Pikachu's voice acting, that they should at least have had Pichu and Raichu have voice acting if they were going to give Pikachu voice acting, because it doesn't make sense to just have him. But whether we like it or not, Pikachu is the mascot for the Pokemon franchise, so it makes sense for the younger audiences to be able to relate back to the show that they're also probably watching on Saturday mornings. Be like, they also probably have Pikachu in their party, whereas older fans like us probably never played with Pikachu again, so we won't be experiencing that other than looking for it specifically anyway. But I do agree that if just one Pokemon had voice acting, that is immersion breaking, so I do agree with your point there.
Well, if we could spend a little less time agreeing with me, if you just spend, 5 minutes agreeing with me every time I make a good point, we're going to be here all day.
Rude. And your next point was Giftmons.
Yeah, that's correct.
Not
actually, my
required.
next point was Ask Greninja.
Not required at all. Some of them you're required to obtain, but the whole nature of Pokemon, at least story mode wise, is you can use whoever you want. You can just put them in the box, never see them again. So the Giftmon whole phenomenon is just making Pokemon that, it's usually rarer Pokemon anyway that are harder to obtain or from past generations, so it makes sense that a lot of them were Kanto because Kanto is the oldest generation.
But it's the most common generation in Kalos. There are more Cantonian Pokemon in Kalos than there are Kalosian Pokemon.
Before X and Y. Sorry, we're running out of time for. But before X and Y, Kanto Pokemon were very difficult to obtain.
Are you
or
kidding
at
me?
least
Pokemon's had like Kanto has like 3 remakes. The most recent was Fire Red and Leaf Green, and it was only like 2 generations away to transfer them up. Not to mention that they appeared commonly in every other region as well.
Back when I played Platinum,
Heart Gold, Soul Silver, you can actually travel to Kanto. Tons of Kanto Pokemon. Johto's basically Kanto 2.0.
okay. What is this?
Yeah, I don't understand English.
Okay.
You can speak.
Wrap it up.
Okay.
Okay. I sort of lost my train of thought there, but generations before, you had to, when Pokemon made the transfer to the DS systems, you had to have multiple systems to do that, or a friend with the different systems, unless you were lucky enough to have multiple. Because from, I believe it was Ruby Sapphire, to get that up to get whatever Pokemon you had in Ruby and Sapphire up to Black and White, you had to trade it to Leaf Green and then to Diamond and Pearl, I think.
No, you just had to use the Palpark to transfer them into Generation 4. And then Generation 4, you could transfer them into Generation 5 using whatever Generation 5's equivalent of the Palpark was.
Which Palpark was a Wii software, correct?
No. You're thinking of probably Pokepark. Palpark is you just shove the GBA game into the GBA slot on your DS and shove the DS game into the DS slot, and they can transfer between each other. Well, transfer one way, of course.
Okay. Something I didn't know, folks. As for, okay, we're gonna wrap up this segment and then we'll be right back.
And the last thing about the fan service is, Santaloon Forest, the first dungeon you enter in this game, is exactly the same as Viridian Forest, the first dungeon you enter in Kanto! They have the exact same Pokemon and the exact same layout. I'm going to put this on the screen. Look at them! Look at them! This is lazy. They couldn't think of like an entirely new dungeon for the first... This is meant to be 3D, but they're literally using 2D map designs. That's why the game looks so trash. They're using 2D map designs on 3D.
That was Viridian Forest. No one can say you're not passionate, Nicholas.
You better not. I'll argue with them about my passion.
Okay, so now I want to go reel a bit back to our first topic of mechanics.
Probably for the best.
We might come back for fan service, just for the giggles. But so, my next favorite part of X and Y was called Pokemon Ami, which using the 3DS second screen allowed you to pet your Pokemon and feed its snacks, which also gave you in-game benefits based on your friendship level with it and how much time you spend.
The objection, that's affection level. Friendship is an entirely different mechanic. Yes, I agree the distinction is stupid, but these are the decisions that Pokemon makes. Sorry, carry on.
Okay, terminology. But the more time you spent with them in Pokemon Ami gave you advantages in battle, like increased hit chance or evasion. And it was also just really darn cute that you could feed your chest pin a little cupcake. And also, it works with every Pokemon. So you could feed the Pokemon Devil a cupcake while he laughs. And that is objectively badass.
Right, well, see, what you consider a good thing, the fact it works with every Pokemon is what I would consider a bad thing. A tremendous amount of effort was spent on giving every Pokemon unique and appropriate animations, and there are even some Pokemon that use separate models for Pokemon and Me. And they had to do that for like all 719 Pokemon at the time. give them multiple animations, and that's good. I can't say that the effort they showed there was not good. But they spent it on the wrong things. The meat and potatoes of this game, the battling, the overworld, the everything that is not Pokemon and me, it desperately needed that attention, but was all shoved into a minigame. And a minigame that, by the way, was horribly unbalanced, because one of the minigames, Head It, was like 5 times more efficient than the other minigames. What were they? Tile Puzzle, and Berry Picker. Head It increased your affection with the Pokemon much, much faster than either of the rest of them, and in fact, using maximum rotations of Head It and feeding them high-quality Pokepuffs, you could max out your affection with this creature in about 20 minutes. So after 20 minutes of patting them, throwing balls of yarn at them, and feeding them cupcakes, they are willing to die for you, and now there is no mechanical benefit to ever interacting with them again. All that effort on, like, how many people are honestly going to go in there with a Slugma, right? But they gave the Slugma, the Pokemon Me model, they gave it special patterns so that when you touch it, you burn your hands. They gave it special animations, and then as soon as you evolve it into a Macargo, all of that's wasted. In fact, you're probably never even going to bring Macargo into Pokemon Me because you'll already have maxed out the Slugma's affection 20 minutes after catching it. There's no reason to come back. No reason to come back whatsoever.
Except for the fun factor. I do agree, Head It was the best minigame and the most fun. I don't think I ever actually played Berry Picker. But Head It, I was playing just for the fun of it afterwards, even after maxing out their stats. But that brings me to the next point, which was Super Training, which was what featured Head It and those other 2 minigames. So Super Training was...
What? No, Super Training was fighting balloons by throwing balls at them.
It was the minigames were part of Super Training.
No.
Because it then affected your stats for Super Training, what it's kept track of.
The minigames increased your affection with Pokemon. Super Training increased your EVs.
Right. Super Training... Pokemon Me did affection.
Yes.
Super Training did the stats.
Yes, EVs.
Right here. IVs were done through just each Pokemon you defeat gives you another IV.
No, that's EVs. IVs are their inherent values when they're born.
And Super Training also augmented this.
Yes, EVs.
Right, so where was the confusion?
You said that the minigames, Head It, Tile Puzzle, and Berry Picker were part of Super Training.
Okay. It all happened on the touchscreen.
That is true.
Or well, except the 3D part of the games on the top screen.
Right.
So my next point was X and Y had really good placement for the daycare, which sped up your shiny hunting very much, and also hunting for different IVs for each specific Pokemon that you were trying to hatch. And the way that they did that was they put the Pokemon daycare on a very long, straight piece of road that you could just ride back and forth on your bike. So it's a bit grindy, but it made it, people were doing that anyway in the other games, but just less efficiently, because you had to go walk around weird formations around whatever buildings or obstacles were in that game.
Yeah, and that's a good point. So for a game that clearly understood where people need to go and what they want in front of their daycare, a long road that they can ride back and forth, why did they put the IV judge, the person that you're going to talk to immediately after you hatch a Pokemon on that long road, on the other side of the region in a post-game area that you can only access via fly?
That is true.
1 step forward, 2 steps back, which is not efficient for egg hatching.
That I agree. next thing I have down is going to drive Nicholas crazy.
It is. I already know what it is.
The XP share.
Oh god, the XP share.
So I really liked the XP share. In previous games, the XP share only, you put it on one of the Pokemon not battling and it gains the same experience, or was it the same experience or just a
50%
portion
of what
a portion of the experience that whatever the battling Pokemon received from victory. In X and Y, the XP share gave the experience to your entire party. So it made leveling up a lot easier and less grindy so that you could keep battling story-wise, not grind-wise. So I thought that kept you going throughout the story and the game a lot faster.
Yeah, okay, so here's my problem with that. Pokemon was never grindy. It's a game made for children. You never needed to grind to have a chance against any leader. There have been people who have beaten this game.
I disagree with that, but continue.
With Magikarp and Seedot and Sunkern. Sunkern, lowest stat Pokemon in the entire series. And the new EXP share gives all your Pokemon way more experience than they actually need. You can turn it off, but the game is balanced, in theory, around using the experience share, so you'd end up way under-leveled without turning it off and on again every few battles. And if you just want to keep it on while having a game that isn't brain-dead easy, you can't even catch the wild Pokemon anymore, because doing that gives you EXP now. Not necessarily a bad thing, but bad when taken as part of a system, and that's what games are, they're systems. So you can't catch in battle 50% of the time with the share on, unless you're willing to use the EXP share yo-yo technique, which is just annoying. They could have at least like attached a button, a hotkey button to let you do that. And it isn't like we needed the game to be any easier, since we now have Mega Evolutions with stats higher than any other Pokemon before.
I believe there was a hotkey button actually, that it could be put as like one of your key item buttons for the D-pad, and you can turn it on and off.
Perhaps. Pokemon to Me gives your Pokemon status resistance, removing even more strategy from the battles. Increased dodge and critical rates, making it more random, so it's basically turning melee into brawl. And the ability to survive lethal battles, but only sometimes, again, completely random. And on top of all that, we're having battles like this. This is the final battle, I'm going to put this on the screen, the final battle against your primary rival in the game. She doesn't even have a full team. Her team doesn't even have full movesets. And one of her movesets, the one on the Flareon, is absolutely terrible. Although it is a Flareon, so its movesets are kind of terrible by default. But that's not the point. This is the kind of battle you could expect to see just one generation prior. Exact same place, Victory Road, same point in the game. That is a team. Competitive movesets, competitive items. And it's tragic, really. Because they clearly knew how to do it well. They did it well just like 5 years earlier. Maybe less. I honestly don't remember when Gen 5 came out.
Okay, well, once again, I can't speak towards Black and White because I didn't play that generation.
Now, you don't need to know anything about Black and White to see that there's a difference between these teams.
Right, that is plain. But you're referring to the game as a system and how the XP share and catching Pokemon gave you experience. And you also said, which this is going to be a theme for this, is that it's optional. If you wanted to make it old difficulty where your experience is only on one Pokemon, like before, you can turn it off, like you said. I agree with that. Serena should have had a full team and better Pokemon, but no, there's no but there. You're right.
So what you're saying is there should be difficulty levels, like optional selectable difficulty levels.
Well, that's sort of what there is. If you turn off the EXP share.
But you have to do that over and over and over again. Wouldn't it be nice if there was just like one easy mode or hard mode?
No, you don't need to turn on and off and on and off. You can either choose permanently on or permanently off. Going flip-flopping back and forth is just flip-flopping.
Yes, exactly. It's annoying. It's annoying.
So, okay, we're going to take another break and then we'll be right back. Okay, so what do you think about the online battles that were introduced?
They're fine. They finally banned Soldu, which is good because previously Latios just wrecked everything. Of course, teams were now more centralized than ever before. Every team ever has a Landorus T, and there's very little diversity, but that's more of a problem that happens when your series has been running for 20 years. No.
So I assume you're speaking to like the metagame professional play.
Yeah, VGC.
But I was more talking about like more casual online battles that you can just do with your friends. Because before X and Y, we researched that you had to be either local or have specific friend codes to play with each other. Whereas for X and Y, it was introduced that you could just play as long as you have a Wi-Fi connection and you could search for each other. So that's opened up a lot more play within friend groups, and I personally had a very involved time with X and Y, more so than the other ones, which extended its lifespan, at least for me.
It was about time too. Nintendo's always been a dinosaur when it comes to online services. At least they got this one right.
Mm-hmm. I think they're also doing that for the Switch now, which is really good. But
yeah, but now
that's another
don't
yeah. But just like every other video game console, unfortunately.
It's true.
But that's another conversation. So we can both agree that online capabilities are very good.
Online battles are. I have strong feelings about Wonder Trading.
Okay, let's talk about Wonder Trade now. So I personally enjoyed it a lot because it was like the gamble of maybe getting a really good Pokemon, even though most of the time you didn't, but that's the gamble that you pay off. And it was also just always exciting to see what you were going to get.
I mean, maybe it would be if you couldn't almost guarantee what you want to get. I've researched quite a few factoids about Wonder Trading, and you will see here the level distribution of Wonder Trading is tremendously oriented to the left-hand side, level 1s, level 5s. Basically everything under level 10, which is what you can catch on Route 1, and you will immediately Wonder Trade into the system, you'll get back like a Zigzagoon in return, and you'll basically never mess with it again. And if you do, then you're pretty much guaranteed to get a level 1 Weakmon, or level 5, level 7, because level 1 at least would mean that they're being bred. But no, these are just being caught in like the first 5 routes in the game, and then thrown out to pollute the Wonder Trade system. Look, for example, at the most common Pokemon traded in Wonder Trade. The first one is Zigzagoon, it's a literal rodent. They're sending out rats, they're sending out bugs. They're not sending their best, they're sending trash from Route 1. And as though that wasn't bad enough, we can handle children catching crappy Pokemon and then sending them out and then getting mad that someone doesn't send them a shiny Mewtwo. But here's the thing. Not only are there children polluting this by sending out tons of weak and useless Pokemon, there's also hackers sending out illegitimately caught Pokemon, as can be evidenced by looking at this. This is the list of the most Wonder-traded Pokemon that are shiny. Now, ignoring the fact that pretty much no one who resets the game 4,192 times, and that's another thing, they halved the shiny rate. They made every shiny Pokemon before less valuable because of that. Why did they do that? Who knows? Anyway, ignoring the fact that pretty much no one who legitimately got a shiny Pokemon is going to just trade them off like that, all these ones marked in red are legendaries. Many of them aren't even able to be gotten legitimately shiny as proof that they are, in fact, hacked.
So all of what you just said is under the assumption that what you're expecting to get from a Wonder Trade is something worthwhile. I saw it more as like a gotcha machine of what like novelty thing you could get out of it, which getting even a hacked legendary like that is still just fun to have, even if it's illegal to use. It's just, look what I got off of the random chance. You never really expect to get like a level 100 Garchomp. That's never going to happen. No one's going to feed that into the Wonder Trade grinder. So if you're expecting to get that, you have to go to regular trades and trade something of your own that's valuable rather than getting something.
Have we not taken enough game design classes to understand that gachas are inherently bad and predatory, though?
When it's taking money, you're trading something else as well.
Yeah, but you have to spend time to catch those, and I would argue that time is more valuable than money because you can't spend money to live longer. Well, actually, you can, but but you're not meant to be able to.
Okay, I think we're going to pause on that. Different ideologies for Wonder Trade.
Yes, that's nice.
Next thing I have down is fairy types were good addition because it nerfed dragons
Yeah, okay.
and changed the balance of typing quite a bit, I think.
It would be nice if there were more fairy types based on like fairy tales and myths and legends, as opposed to just being cute pink things and
That would
girly
be
looking
cool.
things. But it's not a huge problem.
Sword and Shield, though, being based in Europe again, so maybe we get some like Gaelic stuff.
Oh, that would be cool. That'd be cool.
That'd be
Welsh
really
dragons,
cool.
right?
Yeah.
I want that.
Or what was that old dragon thing that was introduced next in line?
Old dragon thing?
There was a dragon that doesn't evolve, but it sort of looked like that, but I can't remember. Okay, fairy types, good. Horde battles.
Horde battles.
Another really good tool for shiny hunting. You use Sweet Scent and you get a batch of 5 of the same, I'll say cannon fodder Pokemon, but if you're looking for a shiny Scrafty or something like that, it was a really good tool because it increased your chances by ×5 because you're looking for 5 times the amount of Pokemon per battle.
Okay, yeah, they do have their use in shiny hunting. However, most of the time when you encounter them, you aren't shiny hunting, and they are terribly and inconsistently balanced. They plummeted your frame rate because, of course, the 3DS can't handle like more than 3 models on screen at once. They're either over in one turn if you have a multi-target move, or a slog that take forever to get through. If any of the Pokemon that you're fighting against have an accuracy decreasing move, or like an attack or special attack decreasing move that targets your attacking thing, then basically you have no chance except to run away because you're going to be doing 1/6 of the damage you should be doing to each Pokemon every turn.
Then run.
But running is much harder because it calculates your run chance 5 times against them. And this isn't helped at all by the fact that you can only catch one of them after the other 4 are fainted. That's annoying. You can't end the battle early by catching one of them.
The worst part of that, it never happened to me, but I've seen videos of where this has happened to people where they get 2 shinies in that batch. And since you can only catch one of them, you have to have the heartbreaking moment of purposely killing a shiny.
If it makes you feel better, I'm pretty sure that video was proven to be hacked if we're thinking of the same video.
Okay. Let's hope so,
Yeah,
because
so.
I wouldn't wish that on anybody.
Well, maybe upon the people who made the game, but...
Those people are heroes. Did you see the death glare there? I think that covered most of what I wanted to talk about for mechanics. And do you want to bring up anything else? Attack me in some other way.
I'm not attacking you, I'm attacking the game. And anyone who defends it. So trainer PR videos, that was, again, effort put towards something that really didn't need it. Like, does anyone here even remember what the trainer PR videos were? Basically, they were like 10-second vines that you could make of yourself with some pre-plastered sprites and words like flying over the screen as sound effects happen and special effects, backgrounds. It wasn't important. You could technically trade your PR videos with other people so you can see them, but who did that? Who does that? That's another one of those weird Nintendo things where they think we want to interact online in ways that no one ever actually interacts online.
Well, I think it was an experimental attempt at replacing the contests somehow, because I think you could get like points based off of game, like some values. I never did PR videos.
is that meant to be an argument for their inclusion? If
No,
that was
I am
attempting
not.
to replace
I am not.
contests.
I'm just saying it was a poor choice.
Yes.
Because I think contests are far superior from doing these PR things.
Sensible.
But I'm just saying that it might have just been an experimental mistake, which that's not to defend it at all. I'm agreeing that it was just a bad decision.
Okay, good, good.
Because I didn't even remember that was a part of the game until you brought it up, because another optional thing, everybody.
So when's the mandatory part of the game going to come? Is the entire thing optional? Well, I guess I didn't actually have to buy it, did I?
Checkmate. Okay, so next we're going to be talking about the game's aesthetics and other graphics, and Nicholas will be coming back.
Yeah.
Okay, so aesthetics and graphics.
Yeah, aesthetics and graphics. Move and hit animations had no soul. They were as bare bones as could be, and they are objectively less detailed and less qualified than pretty much every other 3D Pokemon game before. Even Pokédex 3D Pro, an app that was released for the 3DS, had more detailed models, had prettier models, had better animations, although they didn't have to have moves on them or anything. For example, take this video from Pokemon Battle Revolution, which came out like 10 years earlier. Here you can see the personality in the idle state. Sableye is like wobbling back and forth. He pretends to be hurt.
Objection. You are comparing a mobile handheld game to a console.
I'm
entry.
comparing a game that came out 10 years after this one to this one.
What year did that one come out?
I don't remember. That looks like something you could look up.
Because that's Battle Revolution. I
Yes,
think.
that's correct.
Well, I'm fact checking Nicholas, everybody. – 2006.
2006. All right.
That is crazy.
And when did X and Y come out?
I think it was 2013.
Okay, so 7
Excuse
years.
me.
Not 10. But still, an appreciable amount of time that animations of this quality really
But still, is it
should
not
be
a fair
accepted.
thing to say that handheld games won't live up to console graphics?
It's definitely fair
Okay.
to say that, but 7 years, there should be some improvement. You didn't catch it on camera because I first showed you this when the camera was turned off, but Josh actually asked, is that not with moves turned off? I mean, come on. Look at
Okay,
that.
low kick is a low kick.
That's a double kick.
Double kick.
But I don't blame you, because it looks exactly the same as low kick.
Yeah.
Oh, look, wow, he moved up like a whole 3 positions on the y-axis. Look at him slowly elevating. That is a real fighter right there. Anyway, the art style was inconsistent, and the chibified art style, oh my god, that was hideous.
What are you referring to with chibified art style?
I'm referring to what I have right here. This chibified art style looked outdated a year after it came out. I mean, this was a promotional image. These were meant to be dramatic shots that the Pokemon Company actually released before the game even came out to show off, wow, look at our 3D worlds. But look, no anti-aliasing. Everything turns into just a jumble of illegible pixels. Like,
I was
just
going
a
to
few feet
argue
away from your
that
character.
this is a pro for the game. Because
Well, we'll let the audience look at this and decide whether that's a pro or a
the
con.
step of going from 2D pixelated graphics, where this is your protagonist,
Okay, well, firstly, you
to
squashed
this, that's a huge step. Without the pixely graphics of printing it out aside, comparing this to like another 3D console game like where 3D graphics are far superior is also not fair. You need to compare to other games in the series where they jumped from this to this.
But the pixel games at least had a consistent aesthetic. It's more important that everything matches each other instead of looking like it's a bunch of different assets clumped together. Battle scenes in this game are 2D cutouts. They look exactly the same no matter which angle the camera's pointing at them in. And we aren't even mentioning, I'm just arguing about the environments, but what they did to the Pokémon is absolutely disastrous. Look at these models. Flying types were hit the hardest because the introduction of sky battles forced a ton of Pokemon into T-poses. Specifically, and this is one I can never forgive them for, Xatu. Xatu's entire thing is it looks like a totem pole, right? When it stands down, it's got its wings in front of it, and it looks like one kind of totem pole. When it puts its wings out, it looks like a different kind of totem pole. That's neat, that's cool. But so, in order for him to be able to participate in sky battles, they stuck him in this airborne T-pose where he just looks stupid. I mean, look at his back shot. That void underneath him was clearly never meant to be seen from the bottom or the behind like this. It's tragic. Look how they massacred my boy. And speaking of sky battles, the fact that sky battles exist ruined a ton of models for other Pokemon, and they were inconsistent in their own implementation. There were tons of legendary dragon types, tons of psychic types that have been known to levitate, known to fly, and they can't because their model is on the ground. Look at this. You got the bird, you got the bell, you got the shrimp. They can fly. They are eligible for sky battles. Meanwhile, the parrot and the dragon are not. Hello.
Hi, we have those blue birds from
Right.
Part 3.
Okay.
Let's relocate.
So we will be right back, everybody.
Yeah, we'll be back. Because I'm not done. I'm not done ranting. Welcome back. So you may think that it's just been another quick 10-minute break since the last time we recorded, but actually it's been slightly less than 48 hours. Movie magic. You can't exactly remember what we were talking about last time, so I'm just going to continue complaining about aesthetics and graphics. So the primary aesthetic change that really aggravates me is the new Pokemon models. I understand that they had to make 719 of them, plus some change for forms for this new generation. Ooh, pardon me. But all of the textures are completely washed out. They are faded, especially when you compare them to the sprites of basically any other generation. Look at them. They're very clearly much more pale than the previous ones. And here you've got some GIFs, which I'm going to attempt to put on screen, but I don't know whether GIFs can be put in videos yet, where you can see the initial color palette is applied to the new model, and it looks so much better. There's no reason why they would wash out the colors like that. It just looks poor. Here's some more examples to show that I'm not just cherry picking.
Mm-hmm.
Like, look at those vibrant reds, how it turns into that sickly mutant pink. And Toxicroak, another one. It's just, it seems so much more vibrant with that deep blue color as opposed to that pale blue color. And I honestly don't understand why they did that.
Well, that's something that I never noticed while I was playing, so I don't have much to say about that. Those three examples, I do agree. If they were the original palettes, they look better. But again, I can't picture the differences off the top of my head, so I would have to do some more research. And so I will concede that if that is true across all the Pokemon, then that is a fault.
I have an Imgur album of 19 other options.
19.
So 19. So 22 total. Another thing that I have a problem with is I've already complained about battle animations, but the overworld animations were equally poor. For example, during the big climactic scene near the end of the game, where the ultimate weapon rises out of the earth and it destroys the little village that it has been buried underneath, the houses surrounding this ultimate weapon, they don't crumble, they don't start to, fall apart as their foundations are ripped asunder. Instead, they daintily and in one piece fall over on their backsides. Look at this picture here. It's kind of hard to see because of the fog obscuring everything, but look how all the houses around it have just gently fallen over. I mean, they've still got lights on inside of them. They should be on fire, probably. I mean, someone had their oven running, right?
Everyone lives in primitive log cabins.
All it would have taken was like a destroyed house model. They could have cut away and cut back to this destroyed house model. You didn't even need an animation, but instead what they did is they rotated it 90 degrees along the y-axis.
What you are ignoring, though, is how cool the ultimate weapon does look, though.
Oh yeah, I mean, look at that. That's what, a whole 32 pixels. Really, really impressive. My God, look at those shader effects. That's putting the PlayStation 1 to shame. Two more things. The most emotional song in this game, Memories, was a song that debuted in Gen 5. It's played during the most emotional scene at the end of this game, when AZ, the 9-foot-tall giant, is reuniting with the 3,000-year-old Pokemon. There's a story behind there, don't worry, I'll complain about it later. And they play Memories, and that's a great song. It's a great emotional song, but it's also the song that played in the most dramatic emotional scene in Gen 5. Could it make a new one? Honestly...
Be able to play it over in
Yeah, we might be able to. Really, that's like a shorthand for this entire generation. Taking what Gen 5 did, but worse. Although, to be fair, the remix is better than Gen 5's because of an advanced sound font. I will acknowledge that. They did some really good orchestral music in this game, actually. That's something I can't complain about. Finally, male fashion customization, because this is the game that introduced fashion, because France, of course, was nothing compared to female customization. Men had 4 hairstyles, women had 16. Given the goblin-esque art style they used, one would think they could afford to make a few unisex clothes, especially since the female character's model isn't distinguishably female, except that it wears traditionally female clothes, at least in the overworld. Obviously, the battle models are a bit different, but the overworld, they could have done something there. And that's basically everything that I have to complain about for aesthetics.
So I was also going to bring up the fashion customization options, and I thought it was really good. I didn't feel that I was lacking in hairstyle, but I also have like one of the, like, I'll say customary male hairstyle, so I didn't feel limited. But so I can say I can see how people might get frustrated if they had more unique hairstyles. I didn't play as a female avatar, so I didn't know that they had 16 versus 4. I assumed that it was the same. One could argue that kids aren't very invested in that and that we are more invested, but that's not a reasonable argument either. So I agree that I don't think that it would have been very hard to make at least a few more different customized options. I thought the clothes were good though, and I always liked going to each different town, because each different town you would unlock more options and different shirts and stuff. I'd always enjoy looking at what new stuff I could get, and how at the end game you got the coolest stuff. But I think that was something more expounded upon in Sun and Moon, anyway.
Yeah, I think the gender ratio is a bit more equal there.
But so experimental. So again, not a great argument for lack of options, I guess. As for, I was also going to talk about the 3D environments that I thought were pretty good. I think last time I showed this picture of Lumio City.
Yeah, I really like how your character is almost as tall as the trees. That's really great.
He's like a third of the tree.
Not from this angle.
Okay, well that's angles. But not every part of the game was utilizing the 3D effects of the 3DS.
Yeah, like none of the overworld did.
So I think that would have been pretty cool, but the parts that it did, I think, were pretty effective.
It plummeted the frame rate, though.
You already mentioned this, but they spent time making 3D models for every Pokemon, which took up a lot of their time. But we also talked about how colors ended up getting washed out because of that.
Honestly, I'm not even sure it was because of that.
As for
Couldn't they have just like turned up the saturation on all the textures in the game? I mean, I don't know how they programmed it, but it seems weird that they would be saturated. That seems like...
Can we go back to the Swampert picture real quick?
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, it seems like a conscious choice to me. Sorry, let me just zoom this.
Because yeah, that seems more than just saturation to me. That's like a different blue, at least for the outside body, not like his underbelly. Underbelly, actually, now that it keeps going back and forth, there's differences. So you just briefly said a conscious choice. I don't know why they would do that.
Yeah, I don't know either.
But still, they spent all the time making 3D models to bring it into the next console generation, which I think they're still using. Do they use the same models for Pokemon Go?
Pokemon Go, I don't know. It would make sense.
They definitely reuse them for Sun and Moon.
Yeah, definitely. And Sword and Shield.
Are they reusing them again?
Yeah, we've seen some trailers with using the old models.
Okay. Not quite excited about that.
No.
Although I do like all the models for making the jump from 2D to 3D, which I thought was a major plus for X and Y. The final thing that I have for aesthetics being great is X and Y. I thought had the most interesting Pokemon professor in Sycamore, and who also, you mentioned Emotions being, or Memory, what was the name of the song? Emotion as the most emotional song in the game, but I would argue that it is Sycamore's theme, and we'll see if we can play that right now as well.
We can definitely play it. I'd find a way to play it. It's a great song. I'll admit that. Not emotional, but it is a great song.
I felt emotion every time it started playing.
Well, that's because it's Professor Sycamore. It's not the music itself.
Which I don't have that. Sorry, hold on. What's something?
No, you see, he's trying to sabotage my efforts. You can't trust him.
Sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second.
You were ranting about Sycamore.
Sycamore is awesome.
Yes.
I don't have a picture of him right now, but I'll try to have one for on screen.
We all know what he looks like.
For the audience, we could all argue the classic, like Oak and Elm and Birch are all cool guys, but Sycamore was actually taking an active role in the plot and showed up more than just a couple times at the beginning.
That sounds like we're delving into narrative, which we'll have to pick up after the break.
We'll pick up there after the break. Sycamore is great.
Okay, so
we were getting into story now.
Yeah, and you said that Professor Sycamore did something in the plot, which, that's cute. Off camera, I asked him what Professor Sycamore actually did, and he has not yet been able to give me a response. Do you have one now?
More so than Oak, Birch, or Elm ever did. I can't remember the other two names because Rowan.
3 names. Rowan and Professor Juniper and Professor Juniper. Professor Junipers from Gen 5, the gen immediately prior to this, were expertly wrapped up in the plot. They were there actually fighting against the bad guys, perhaps not directly themselves, but they were standing right next to the gym leaders who actually were fighting them. They provided advice, they told you how to operate the machines that would save the region, because there was... In the sequel, there was this machine that was fusing the monsters together, and the professors were the only people smart enough to figure out how to unfuse the monsters. Because, you know, having a PhD in monster studies also makes you a genius engineer. That's how science works in Pokemon. Anyway, they were actually involved in the plot. Professor Sycamore just showed up, looked pretty, played the theme song, and then battled you one time. That was cool, but he had no actual involvement in the plot. In fact, if anything, he was an enabler, because Lysandre, the big, evil, bad boss who's meant to be a secret, is walking around saying, "This world isn't perfect, I must make it as beautiful as I." And Professor Sycamore is going like, "Oh, yes, yes, you're so clever, you're so passionate." I mean...
I'm clearly at a disadvantage, again, because I've not played Black and White. Because it sounds like if what you're saying is accurate, that Juniper is really cool. But I've
Junipers. There's two of them.
There's two Junipers.
Two Junipers.
There's two Pokemon professors in Black and White.
There are. Double the fun. And I would argue at least one of them is attractive as Professor Sycamore.
Let's investigate, folks. Juniper. Okay, that's the one. This is the picture that I've seen before. Is he
Yep.
other Professor Juniper?
Yep, that's Professor Juniper the Younger's father. I don't actually remember what Professor Juniper the Younger's first name is. I'm sure she has one, but yeah. Doesn't.
Do we know any of their first names?
Oh yeah, Professor Juniper the Older is Cedric.
Oh, I meant like the other professors.
Oh yeah,
also.
Professor Oak's first name is Samuel.
Huh. Fun fact, everybody.
Anyway, who is meant to start the narrative
My
section?
name is Steve Tree. Because all of them are named after trees.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. Took me a second there. So who was starting story narrative again? Were you saying it was good and then now saying it was bad, or the other way around?
I guess I'll take it.
Okay.
I liked the story.
We're professionals, people.
I liked the story because the premise was the history of like the Pokemon War and how death for Pokemon and people was actually a real thing finally, which it might have happened in Black and White, but I'm not knowledgeable about that again. Where was I? I got distracted by my...
You were saying
rapid
how
rage.
X and Y's story was masterful because it acknowledged the death of this thing, and was like the first one to mention this in a
No,
children's
that was not
children's video game.
my main point, as I now have back here. The story revolved around the Pokemon War and the Ultimate Weapon, I believe it was called.
Yeah,
Ultimate Weapon. How it used Pokemon lives to fuel the weapon and set about an apocalypse. And the story of the actual present game.
Yeah, because that's all backstory. Sounds like a really interesting story, but we don't get to see any of it.
We get to see it in a cool tapestry cutscene.
The frame rate plummets if you put it in 3D.
So the story of the present game is Team Flare trying to reactivate this weapon and cleanse the world in a genocide way, which this is a children's game, or supposed to be a children's game. So I liked this attempt at making a Pokemon game somehow more mature for the aging fans like us. We're in our 20s now, so it's more than just the cutesy, we're playing with our pets, and I did argue for Pokemon on the earlier, which was great, because I'm a child at heart, but I liked the more mature tones in certain parts of the game. Yeah, so I liked the Ultimate Weapon backstory. So what do you feel about it, Nicholas?
Well, I feel that we can't say that the story is more mature simply because it acknowledges the death of the thing, or shows the death of the thing. Including death does not make a story mature. Including mature subjects does not make a story mature.
For a game
Handling
series
them-
that in battle explicitly avoided for years, for more than a decade, of avoiding the word killing and death in battling, in making the term "your Pokemon fainted," I think that's a step.
Okay. Well, this seems like a conflict of opinion. My opinion is that including a mature subject does not make a story mature. Handling it maturely makes it mature. Otherwise, we would say something like the Punisher is a mature hero compared to Iron Man, which he clearly isn't. He's a screaming man-child. I mean, he was created in what, the 90s, right? Could you look up when the Punisher was written?
Punisher. Like when his first comic appearance was?
Yeah, I guess so. Actually, wasn't he a bad guy at first? And then they made him a good guy, probably.
No idea, dude.
He's an anti-hero.
Yeah, he is.
And he first appeared in the Spider-Man comic.
That's right. That's right.
1971.
Oh, you beat me to it.
I've actually read that comic. Oh, it's because I'm a comic fan, so.
Right. Anyway, speaking...
We'll bring you back for the Punisher debate.
Yeah. Speaking just generally about Gen 6, Gen 6 comes on the tail end of Gen 5, which had a story that expertly involved your rivals, the gym leaders, the evil admins, and you. I now challenge anyone in the audience, including my friend Josh here, to name a single one of Team Flare's admins, besides the Elite Four member, the main boss, and the head scientist. Because there were 4 other admins. Yeah. Gen 6 groups basically never interact. In Gen 5, the gym leaders help you storm the evil team's castle. Yeah, they've got castle. And they hold off Team Plasma's 7 sages, so you can go ahead. It's 8 gym leaders, 7 sages. One wonders why another gym leader couldn't go with you, but this is fine. They're actually doing something in the plot. Before you meet each gym leader in the game, you encounter them, you have an encounter with Team Plasma with them frequently, you get to understand them, what they fight for, how they fight, before you ever step foot in their gym, because they are active members of their community. They are out and about doing things. Of course, that makes sense because the Unova region is America and the Kalos region is France, but even so, we don't need that kind of realism in our game. I want my gym leaders to be actual people, not set pieces.
I think this debate's becoming more and more about getting me to play Black and White.
They're developed
Which
characters.
you're succeeding, because I definitely want to play it now.
Good. Well, yeah, that is actually the secret agenda I had here. They develop characters with personalities, interests, truths, and ideals. Gen 6's entire cast are one-note cardboard cutouts that can be summed up in one word. Literally, I can do it. And for the 14 Flare admins that no one can name, including me, I can sum them up in their color, because that is the only thing that distinguishes them. They've got these Daft Punk masks that are a different color. It's kind of cool. Too bad they don't have personalities.
I wish Daft Punk had personalities too.
Well, for them, that's kind of the point that they don't have personalities, because it's about the music, it's not about the people.
I'm pulling up a picture of the Team Flare admins, everybody, because I can't. Oh, now I remember them.
Yeah. You've got Lady Gaga and Michael Jackson. Fat Michael Jackson. Fat white Michael Jackson. Speaking of lack of... Oh, and Pitbull. Don't forget Pitbull. Too many rivals. You've got 4 of them, and each of them is desperately one note. Frequently, they're just plain annoying, as 2 of them are basically just catchphrases and gimmicks given legs. They do not contribute to the plot, they provide no mechanical benefit, and they do not even provide a challenge. As compared to the Black and White rivals, who are fleshed out characters that go through character arcs as the game progresses, and in the sequel, they have reached their epilogue. I'm going to complain more about the rivals when we come back.
We'll talk more about rivals afterwards, because I like them.
All right, so we were just talking about Detective Pikachu, and the Mad Lad actually saved a picture of that screaming Ludicolo as his desktop.
We'll put that up.
Yeah, we'll put that up. So, rivals. I was complaining about them. They have nothing to do with the plot. Shauna, I think, stands next to you when Lysandra is saying, "Wahaha, I'm so evil, my machinations have laid undetected." And I mentioned that they do not provide a challenge. Here is example A. This is the final fight with Tierno. Their names are basically interchangeable because they're so bland. Yeah, that's 3 Pokemon. One of his Pokemon has 1 move. That's, wow, that's really something. No held items, just... In a Pokemon game, I expect to fight Pokemon trainers. He is a Pokemon hobbyist. Why would I be friends with a Pokemon hobbyist?
That's pretty elitist of you.
And then there's Trevor.
All Pokemon ways of life are valid.
Then there's Trevor, your other T rival. He fights you by comparing the size of your decks, and I've been practicing saying that line so it doesn't sound weird for about a week. his catchphrase is, to put it another way, which he says in basically every conversation, once or twice. It's like, you know how sometimes in Japanese when someone's writing for a bear character, they'll put kuma at the end of every one of their lines? That's what they did in the American translation.
How else would you know that they're a bear?
What they make bear puns. Persona 4, they make bear puns. They don't say kuma at the end of it.
You're telling me Teddy looks like a bear?
Yeah, he looks
Teddy
like a
does
bear.
not look like a bear.
He looks like a cartoon bear, which was the point. Anyway, yeah, Trevor is... You keep distracting me. He's trying to get me off track. His machinations have lain undetected, but I'm detecting them. Trevor just repeats his catchphrase over and over, and he exists to make you feel bad if you somehow get through the game without catching 10 Pokemon, but otherwise has no tangible purpose. You only fight him one-on-one once, right before the end of the game, and he has 3 Pokemon. And actually, he's a harder fight than Tierno, because at least his moves aren't... I mean, I'm fairly certain his Pokemon don't have full moves, but at least one of his Pokemon has more than one move. Yeah, let's investigate that.
Trevor's team. Oh, such a nice throw.
And his Japanese name is Tova. Oh, you're kidding me. Yeah, there we go. Full movesets. Even so.
He has a Raichu, Aerodactyl, and a Florges.
And that Raichu has Quick Attack. Wow, that's really something. Your 4th rival. Well, actually 3rd, because I haven't talked about Shauna yet. 3rd rival, Serena, or Callum, if you're a male. Your main rival is she's just not worth mentioning. She's more well-written than any other character in the game, but that's just really sad. And for your main rival, and in-universe daughter of 2 ace trainers, she still really sucks. She isn't a challenge. She's meant to be your main rival, and also, I have a problem with the concept of main rivals. There is nothing that would prevent them from putting the effort into writing her that they could have put forth towards the other 4, except for the fact that you've got 4 rivals. Finally, your 4th...
There wasn't ever more than one rival until Black and White, right?
No. Gen 3 had Wally. Wally was also a, tertiary rival.
Okay. Wally was so cool.
Yeah, he was. Did you hear the theme song in Oris?
Yeah,
Really
that
cool.
one was good.
We'll play it for a bit. Anyway, finally, your 4th rival is Shauna. She has a romance subplot of the most E-for-everyone variety. Not only do female trainers get utterly cheated out of this, but her subplot gets wrapped up within the first 2 hours of the game. You see fireworks together, a butler gives you protection, bada bing, bada boom, you're done. She's never relevant again. Compare and contrast to Black and White 2's romance subplot, which is a 10-hour-long side quest that makes you feel like you earned it. You learn more about your partner, you can be a boy or a girl, and they go through character development as you spend time with them. If you're going to give your Pokemon a romance subplot, damn it, commit! Commit! I agree, it's a weird thing to be in an E-for-everyone game, but if you're going to put it in...
what's more romantic than seeing fireworks together, everybody?
Having an actual relationship!
But fireworks.
You see the fireworks with the Black 2 and White 2 love interest as well, you know? And you ride the Ferris wheel.
But were they in 3D? I don't think so.
Neither were the fireworks shot up. It took place in the overworld, which is 2D.
Oh, it's still 3D, just not actually 3D.
I mean,
3D environment.
They did have actual 3D environments in Black and White, you know, like the bridges were all 3D. You should look at Sky Arrow.
Those bridges were quality.
Anyway, the first time you interact with your rivals is passable. You and the idiots enter the forest, and Viridian Forest, by the way, Santaloon Forest, Viridian Forest, it's the same thing, we've been over that. And they're in there running around by themselves, commenting on the environment. It's neat. But it never happens again. You never see them expressing any form of self-motivation outside of the cutscene, and even then it's arguable. Why did they only do that once? If they'd just done that for every route, if they'd had them be in the wilds. But no. I mean, are they even your friends? Because they all run off together, and then they leave you behind. There is no post-game, besides a 10-minute side quest that tried to have some sort of emotional stakes. In reality, it only happens because you let Pokemon Goebbels, is that how you pronounce his name?
Pokemon who?
Goebbels, the World War II Nazi guy. I think he worked under Hitler. He was like the lead scientist, right?
Pokemon Gibble.
Anyway, it only happens because you let Pokemon Gebbles walk away because no one else in the game is an actual character. In Gen 5, when the admins tried to walk away, the gym leaders stepped up and stopped them because they are pillars of the community. They are good citizens. But in this case, it's up to a 10-year-old. Yes. I mean, I know it's always been up to a 10-year-old at the end, but let the other
Somebody call
characters...
Officer Jenny.
Let the other characters have some role in the game. Otherwise, you have a plotless game, like with X and Y. Team Flare is woefully underused, with every minion being a brain-dead fascist. Again, this is coming off of the heels of the extraordinarily well-written Team Plasma. Team Plasma had a cause: protect Pokemon by freeing them from the lives of slavery under trainers. That allowed there to be members who believed in their mission, members who were just in it to be a punk, well-intentioned extremists, grey morality, in the game called Black and White. I mean, that was obviously intentional. In Black 2 and White 2, the people who honestly believed in Team Plasma's goal actually split from Neoplasma and became an allied faction, allied to you, the player. Team Flare is just to buy your way into this cool club situation. There's no room for exploration there. Malva, a primary member of Team Flare, who was actually in the Elite Four, has no role in the story. No one else even seems to know she's in the Elite Four, or was in Team Flare. Seriously, wasted potential. Consider the stories you could have told with that. Think how she could have corrupted the League with her influence. Consider how she must have felt after you murdered her boss. But nothing changes, and of course you can't tell anyone that she was a Pokemon Nazi because you're a silent protagonist. Speaking of Pokemon Nazi, let's talk about Pokemon Hitler. They tried to make Lysander? That's more
Lysander.
Lysander, yeah, okay. They tried to make Lysander a complex, nuanced character, but he's not. It's just melodrama. Also, Pokemon Hitler creating something called the Holocaster. Nice. He wants to... I'm glad you find Holocaust so funny. I'm disappointed in you. Shame. Lysander wants to Thanos Kalos because he believes that people consume more than they produce. Fine, whatever. That's the motivation. Okay. So he's going to kill everyone except the people he recruited to Team Flare, who, due to the recruitment requirements, are all shallow fascists who slip their way into money. In universe, he's too smart to not realize something that obvious, so yeah, he's just written terribly. He's not meant to be written as a hypocrite. He's not meant to be written as stupid. He just is. And he's doing this to save the Pokemon, which he will kill with his nuke. You know who's doing disastrous things for the Pokemon and wasn't written as a hypocritical idiot? N. Basically, the Lysander of Team Plasma, just one generation prior. And N had a reason to be the way he was. N had a reason to be a hypocrite, because he was a boy who was born and raised and abused as a child, and introduced to abused Pokemon, and used as a tool by his abusive father. Did I mention the abuse? There's some maturity for you.
N is the green-haired guy.
Yeah, Natural Harmonia Gropius is his true name, so you can understand why it goes by N. Seriously.
Natural hormonal Gropius.
No, Natural Harmonia Gropius. Yeah, N was Lysander's character, but written so much better and so less stupidly. And of course, it's meant to be a plot twist that the redhead, super obsessed with beauty, who's constantly talking about cleansing the world, might be in charge of a fire-themed organization that all wear red suits, like his. Maybe that's because his ace Pokemon is a water type, Gyarados. Hey, there we go, more Gen 1. Y'all like Gen 1, right? What's his face? Giovanni. Giovanni had a Gyarados, so yeah, this guy has a Gyarados too. And, you know, his ace does not look like the Pokemon that he looks like, Pyroar. Look at that. That makes sense, right? Now imagine we put a giant blue sea lizard in front of him. Now. One last thing to describing this train wreck of the game. AZ is meant to be this game's end, probably. He's a 9-foot-tall, immortal giant who's a genius inventor. But who even remembers AZ? Not even you did.
I didn't remember his name was AZ. I remembered he was a thing, and that he was a plot point, but I didn't remember his name was AZ.
How do you write a 9-foot...
Because he never introduces himself.
He does.
As AZ.
Yes. How do you
I
write
don't remember that.
a 9-foot-tall, immortal genius inventor so blandly and poorly that one can't even remember him? that's easy enough. You just interact with him exactly twice before the end of the game, and you probably met up with him like 20 times, at least once per every city. Oh yeah, and when you battle him, this is his Versus Sprite. Now, most of the Versus Sprites in this game are just hand-drawn things. For occasional important battles, they use a 3D model, and then the camera does like a stupid zoom-in kind of thing to them. You battle this guy exactly once, right before the credits roll. Literally, the game's already ended by that point. It's a battle that I think you're allowed to lose, and the game will continue anyway. And this is his Versus Sprite. Like, they couldn't pick any better angle than this.
I showed you my
Well,
Pokeballs, please
He was a
respond.
giant.
Yeah, I
You're
know. but
looking at him, looking up at
They
him,
could've
as a
handled-
12-year-old child would also.
They could have handled that better, though. They could have had the camera, like,
No,
not...
they could have put the kid on top of a ladder to like look at him at eye level, right?
If they even made him look down at you. From this angle, he's just looking directly past your head. But imagine if they just moved that eye, that like conglomeration of blurry pixels, just a few points downward. Imagine how much impact that would have. And then they could have the camera like zoom in on his eyes and stares at you. That'd be cool. That's the kind of stuff they did in Oris, but not in this. I'm done.
That's all you have for plot.
I'm spent. I can't do it anymore. I'm tired.
Okay, well, I think the conclusion of this debate is I need to go play Black and White.
You do too. You all need to play Black and White. This is the pinnacle of the series. It's probably the best it's ever going to get.
I still think X and Y is great. Bye-bye.